It's been nearly 3 decades since the unsolved murder of 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey, a case that captivated the nation. And even though her parents always denied any involvement in her death,
a 6-year-old pageant star found lifeless in her own basement rocked the world back in 1996. The haunting image of little JonBenet Ramsey lying still beneath holiday lights felt like a punch to the national heart. For nearly 30 years, her family has lived under a storm of whispers and accusations that never truly died down. Now, the unthinkable has happened because her older brother Burke has broken his silence after 28 long years of carrying that weight. His words pour out like water from a cracked dam, ripping open memories many hope to forget. He was only 9 when tragedy struck, yet reporters and talk shows treated him like a grown suspect. In those early days, television vans camped outside the Ramsey house all night long. They zoomed their cameras on every drawn curtain and every stuffed bear carried to the trash, hoping for a clue they could twist into guilt. The entire country joined the speculation game. Was it a jealous competitor from the pageant scene? Was it a prowler who slipped through the dark? Or was it an awful secret kept behind closed doors? Every move the Ramseys made fed the blaze. When Patsy Wepsom called an act. When John avoided cameras, they called it cold. When Burke stayed inside, they said it was proof he had something to hide. Fast forward to today. Burke, now a man with a quiet life in software engineering, chose the national stage of Dr. Phil for his first deep interview. His hands trembled as he described the last Christmas he spent with his sister, a night filled with laughter, twinkling lights, and unopened presents that would never be enjoyed. He remembered waking up to chaos impossible to grasp at 9 years old. Lights flashed, police radios crackled, and his mother's screams echoed to the halls like a siren he never wanted to hear again. One line from the funeral seared itself into his brain. His father whispered that JonBenet was in heaven now, then collapsed in tearful agony, which snapped something inside Burke. He said that was the instant he felt fear of the world replace the innocence of childhood. The ransom note discovered on the kitchen staircase only deepened the terror. Detectives measured its length at 2.5 pages, an eternity in criminal terms. It demanded exactly $118,000, the sum of John Ramsey's recent bonus, which felt too precise to be coincidence. Even more chilling, the paper and pen came from inside the house, and the handwriting seemed feminine, though experts never agreed on a match. Burke's critics latched onto every oddity in his later behavior. They froze frames of his television appearance, claiming his slight grin meant hidden joy, yet psychologists explain it was a reflex triggered by extreme stress. In the newly released police tapes, young Burke sits in a chair way too large for him, swinging his feet as detectives ask gentle yet direct questions. They present a flashlight and ask if he ever used it to hit his sister. He shakes his head firmly, saying absolutely not, while clutching a Batman action figure for courage. They ask why he never left his bed during the mayhem. Burke answers that he was scared stiff, imagining a stranger creeping through the halls. He says he buried his head under the covers and prayed for his parents to fix whatever nightmare was unfolding. Over the years, internet forums exploded with wild theories. Some insisted JonBenet died during a choreographed prank gone wrong, while others swore it was a ritual crime tied to local elites. Investigators chased every rumor, testing DNA evidence recovered from her pajamas and under her fingernails. They compared samples to known offenders and to family members, yet no definitive match has ever closed the case. Even so, the absence of forced entry keeps dragging suspicion back to the household. Law officers admit that possibility, but also remind the public that older homes can be breached with clever skill, leaving little trace. John and Patsy tried to shield Burke by sending him back to school and to summer camp. Yet everywhere he went, someone's parent flung a newspaper headline in his face and whispered questions that cut deeper than any playground shove. Reporters once chased the Ramseys down a church hallway on Christmas Eve, demanding to know if they harmed their own child. That kind of pressure can warp any family, yet the Ramseys held public fasts, prayed openly, and begged authorities to find the real culprit. Time rolled on, but the pain never softened. Patsy succumbed to cancer in 2006, still insisting her family was innocent. Her dying wish was for the mystery to be solved so JonBenet could finally rest in peace. Today, the Boulder Police Department says modern genealogical testing is underway using tiny bits of DNA too small to decode years ago. They partner with federal experts, hoping advanced software can trace a relative of whoever left that microscopic clue on JonBenet's clothing. Why does this story still grip millions like a vice? Maybe it is because JonBenet embodied perfect holiday innocence, and that innocence was snatched away under sparkling Christmas lights. Maybe it is because the crime mixes wealth, beauty, power, and deep tragedy in one unforgettable package that still leaves tongues wagging. Or maybe it is because everyone wants to believe that even a cold case can blaze back to life if truth finally finds its voice. Burke's new testimony has stirred the coals into sudden flame, and the world is watching again with wide, uncertain eyes. Yet he is not the only family member ready to speak. Jon Ramsey has stepped forward with a torrent of emotion that forces everyone to rethink past accusations. He vows to hunt the real killer until his last breath and hints that fresh evidence will shock anyone who thinks the story is over. Back in the late 90s, television specials aired endless loops of JonBenet's pageant performances. Viewers saw her sparkling blue eyes and practiced twirls. Then the screen crashed to the grim basement scene, creating a jarring before and after that glued people to their couches. Tabloid magazines sold millions by placing JonBenet in sequins beside crime scene diagrams. Those covers turned a mystery into a grotesque national pastime that kept the Ramsey name spinning on every checkout lane for years. Even Hollywood could not resist. Several crime dramas borrowed plot lines clearly inspired by the case, forcing writers to change character names after public pushback. True crime authors churn out books that promise a final answer, yet each volume contradicted the last, leaving readers more confused than before. Every new theory only deepened the maze. Meanwhile, volunteers placed angel statues on a Ramsey lawn each Christmas Eve. They lit candles, sang carols, and begged the universe for justice, hoping the glow might guide investigators toward truth. Not once did Burke attend those vigils because crowds made him panic. He admits he watched from an upstairs window, heart pounding, while strangers prayed for a sister they never met. Do not blink, because the next revelation racing toward us could break this case wide open and show the horrifying secret hidden since that snowy night. Justice should be swift, yet the man who lost his little girl has waited almost 3 decades for even a hint of it. Jon Ramsey still lies awake at night, tormented by the sickening thought that the person who shattered his family might be walking free. From day one, he begged investigators to hunt that monster with every tool they had, but he insists they chose an easier target, his own household. That decision, he says, poisoned the entire case and left a real threat laughing in the dark. Imagine carrying that weight through birthdays, holidays, and silent evenings when the house feels too big. Jon feels every tick of the clock as a reminder that no handcuffs ever snapped shut. He remembers police flashbulbs exploding in his face while reporters hurled cruel questions like stones. Instead of comfort, he got suspicion, and the bruise of that betrayal still aches. Tunnel vision, according to Jon, froze the investigation in its first hours. By zeroing in on the parents, detectives ignored fresh footprints that could have led to strangers slipping through the night. Days stretched into months into years, and each sunrise without an arrest felt like salt ground into an open wound. As time crawled forward, officers grew defensive, shutting out outside experts who begged to help. Jon calls that stubbornness the greatest crime after crime. He watched evidence grow cold while decision-makers guarded their reputations like fragile glass. The weight on Patsy Ramsey was crushing. She adored JonBenet, yet tabloids painted her as a villain, and the stress gnawed at her health until cancer claimed her in 2006. Jon's eyes still fill with tears when he recalls her final days, robbed of the peace of knowing who hurt their child. He carries that ache like a stone in his chest. Even today, many of the same detectives remain on the file, something Jon finds almost unbelievable. He wonders why fresh minds armed with modern forensic software have not been unleashed on every scrap of evidence. To him, it feels less like an investigation and more like a fortress built to protect bruised egos. Each year, that wall grows higher, blocking the path to truth. Jon also blames a media circus that swooped in when police whispered their suspicions. Talk shows spun wild theories, and breakfast tables across America discussed a family like characters in a soap opera. Rumor crowded out logic. Questions that should have focused on motive and opportunity were replaced by gossip about pageants and ransom sums. Still, Jon refuses to surrender. He trusts breakthroughs in touch DNA, genetic genealogy, and 3D crime scene modeling to unearth clues missed by older tech. He prays a new team will one day audit every photograph, retest every fiber, and reconstruct every step taken inside that house. If that happens, he believes the puzzle will finally lock into place. John's fight is not fueled by revenge, but by a father's promise that his daughter will not be forgotten. He wants to stop the killer from striking again and to spare another family from the agony he calls a nightmare that breeds. When he speaks of JonBenet, his voice softens, painting memories of a bouncy child who filled rooms with laughter and glitter. He refuses to let the world remember her only as a headline. 2+ decades of frustration suddenly flared back into global chatter when John teased new DNA evidence during a recent interview. Could the long-hidden code finally name the intruder? The world leaned in closer. A bright light extinguished far too soon still haunts every cold case born in America. Had she survived, JonBenet Ramsey would be celebrating her 35th birthday this year. Maybe chasing her own toddlers around a yard. Instead, history freezes her at 6. A tiny performer with sparkling gowns and a smile that outshone stage lights. That smile became a symbol of innocence lost when, on the morning after Christmas 1996, she was found beaten and strangled in the basement of her own home. No arrest, no trial, no closure. That maddening silence is why her name refuses to fade. The mystery of who ended her short life remains one of the nation's darkest riddles. The horror began before sunrise when John and Patsy noticed their daughter's bed was empty. Moments later, Patsy's scream ripped through the house as she discovered a long handwritten ransom note demanding $118,000. Police arrived quickly, but the response spiraled into chaos almost instantly. Neighbors wandered through halls. Friends wiped tears on furniture, and officers allowed evidence to vanish under careless hands. For 6 agonizing hours, no one located JonBenet, even though she lay only 1 floor below. That delay, experts say, erased footprints, smeared fingerprints, and scattered microscopic traces that could have spoken louder than any witness. Reporter Paula Woodward, who covered every twist of the case, still shudders at the memory of that disarray. She vividly recalls the stunning moment John Ramsey himself found his child's body after an officer casually told him to have a look around. Had trained homicide specialists controlled the scene, JonBenet might have remained undisturbed, preserving vital clues. Instead, a father lifted his daughter's limp form and carried her upstairs, a heartbreaking act that also complicated forensic analysis. John describes the instant he saw her small frame as a whiplash of relief and horror. For a split second, he thought she was alive. Then the truth punched the breath from his lungs. The tragedy was monstrous enough. Yet police quickly hinted that either John or Patsy must have done it. From that assumption grew decades of doubt that cling to the family like smoke. John remembers officers interrogating him about minute details, while the real predator vanished into the world. He wonders daily how different the outcome might have been if seasoned detectives had seized control the very first morning. Evidence like disturbed cobwebs, odd footprints, a garrote fashioned from a paintbrush, and a flashlight heavy enough to crack a skull all demanded expert scrutiny. Yet mishandling turned crucial items into question marks. Somewhere inside that jumble of facts lies the name of a killer, John insists, and he is determined to pry it loose. He dreams of a day when the final report is filed, and a gravestone no longer asks why. Stay alert because breakthroughs in forensic technology race forward every year, and each advancement tightens the net around whoever committed this vile act. When that net snaps shut, it will not only vindicate a grieving family, it will prove that even the coldest case can still burn bright with justice. Chaos. That single word captures the first cruel hours after JonBenet Ramsey disappeared, and John Ramsey still cannot believe all that chaos unfolded inside his own house that snowy morning. He insists the entire disaster, from sloppy evidence collection to misinvestigative steps, was fully avoidable if seasoned crime scene rules had been followed and enforced. He remembers officers trampling plush carpets, brushing against door frames, and allowing sympathetic neighbors to wander through rooms that should have been sealed behind bright yellow tape. In his view, a deadly combination of rookie inexperience and stubborn arrogance crashed together, blowing the investigation apart before it even left the starting line. To make matters worse, Loose lips inside the department leaked half-baked rumors to hungry reporters who printed every sensational whisper as if it were carved in stone. Once the press learned JonBenet had entered child beauty pageants, a detail completely unrelated to the crime scene, national curiosity exploded into a wildfire that no one on earth could contain. For short days after her death, the first color photo of JonBenet in full pageant makeup splashed across screens, and suddenly judgment rained down on the Ramseys like a summer hailstorm. Critics, many who had never raised a child, snarled that no caring parent would let a 6-year-old wear rhinestones and lipstick under stage lights. Commentators accused Patsy of forcing her daughter to live out an unfulfilled dream. Yet John swears that single image never told the real story hiding behind the sparkles. He says JonBenet had a powerhouse personality, loved microphones, and begged to join contests because she adored costumes and applause, and it even joked she needed to lose sometimes so she would learn life's ups and downs. Still, the public latched onto that glamorous photo like glue, and every denial from John or Patsy bounced off walls already hardened by opinion. Physical evidence gaps that might have cleared their names were ignored, while talk shows kept the blame game spinning day after day. Months rolled into years with no suspect charged and no trial set. In 2006, cancer stole Patsy's life before she ever knew who robbed her family of its shining star, and grief settled over John like a permanent midnight fog. Yet 2 years later, a tiny sliver of hope pierced that darkness when the district attorney revealed that DNA from an unknown male was discovered on JonBenet's clothing. The finding cleared John and Patsy with laboratory certainty and arrived with a rare formal apology. John accepted the apology, but he did not mistake it for justice. That single genetic clue proved his family's innocence beyond argument, yet left the true predator free to smile at dawn, free to watch newscasts, free to breathe the air JonBenet would never breathe again. The breakthrough happened only because modern instruments detected microscopic evidence earlier machines had missed. Yet even with that leap, no match appeared in any database, and the investigation slid back into eerie silence. A fresh burst of optimism swept through John in 2018 when similar DNA sleuthing unmasked the Golden State attacker after 4 decades on the run. John toured the lab that cracked that historic case and walked out convinced the same technology could hunt JonBenet's killer if given a chance. He pleaded, first in letters, then in person, then through attorneys, for remaining biological samples to be shipped to cutting-edge genealogical experts, certain this was their best shot at breaking the ice. Enter Cece Moore, a superstar in cold cases, who compares her work to assembling a giant puzzle spilled across an attic floor. Through genetic genealogy, she tracks distant cousins, builds sprawling family trees, and zeroes in on suspects by linking shared strands of code that never lie. She says the moment she identifies a culprit, her chest tightens because, for an instant, she alone understands the darkness that person unleashed. Cece and her colleague Dr. Ellen Gradick examined more than 1 million DNA markers, far beyond the few dozen tested by earlier labs, giving them a lightning-bright chance to generate brand new leads even when no suspect profile exists in any archive. Dr. Ellen explains that old forensic science treated DNA like a fingerprint, match or nothing,